So delighted to be here, and thanks very much for joining us, especially it being the last session of the day, I think. So we hopefully are not keeping you from drinks, and you've all got yourself a drink. I'm Manjari Chandran-Ramesh. I'm a partner with Amadeus Capital Partners, and we are a global technology investor that invests worldwide in deep tech companies. Quantum is definitely very much part of that. We are investors in Riverlane, in New Quantum that does quantum interconnects, a hardware company that is still in stealth mode, and one of our other companies that was called CryptoSense got acquired earlier this year by Sandbox AQ. So I'm here today to discuss with my esteemed panel members on the UK-US partnerships and how they're delivering the promise of quantum technologies. The UK government, for those of you who aren't aware, in 2015 set up 4 hubs, research hubs, and through that funding, that then led to a number of startup companies spinning out of various universities, which was further enhanced with funding from the National Quantum Technology Programme through grant funding by Innovate UK. But then there's also been a further ecosystem like places like the NQCC, which is a test bed for quantum technologies, and NLP that works on benchmarking. And these two are 2 independent entities that don't have an affiliation to either research groups or various quantum startups. And that has then led to several shining examples in this field. We have examples here on stage, but also you may have heard the CEOs of Orca, Quantum Motion, Phasecraft, and Universal Quantum, in the conference. So if you haven't spoken to them already, or the panelists, please do reach out to all of them either later today or tomorrow. And if you are based outside of the UK and are interested in learning more about the ecosystem and how your company can benefit from coming to the UK, do speak to Ben or Florence, who are part of the Science and Innovations Network from the UK government and are also in amongst us here today. So without further ado, I'd like to invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about their company, starting with Steve.
Cool, thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Steve Brierley, CEO and founder of Riverlane. So we work on the classical information processing part of the stack. So there are many ways to develop qubits, and there's a huge amount of data that comes out of the system that needs to be processed in real time. The principal application for this is quantum error correction. So this is how we get from the noisy systems we have today to useful utility scale quantum computers. I would say we've massively benefited from being in the UK. It has both amazing physics, amazing quantum bits, but also is one of the best places in the world to develop semiconductors, to design chips. So that's why we're based in Cambridge, and we've recently expanded into the US. So yeah, really happy to talk about that.
Hi, my name is Dr. Ilana Wisby. I am a deep tech entrepreneur and the CEO of Oxford Quantum Circuits. OQC is a pure play quantum compute as a service company. So we build end-to-end quantum systems and then we deliver them so that people can access quantum computers today commercially through both public and private cloud access. So our latest system, Lucy, is available on Amazon Web Services. So you can log on to Amazon Bracket and you can run quantum programs on Lucy anytime between 10 and 1 UK time. Sorry, I have no idea what time that is over here, probably late at night. And we also have private POCs as well with various customers. So we're now rolling out our systems into data centers across the world. So we're partnering with some of the world's leading data centers to make sure that we can get quantum into the hands of humanity and test this stuff in production as quickly as possible. Now, we are very proud to be a UK organisation and company. We are really proud to be working with the UK government and the NQCC. We support their Spark programme, so anybody that wants to run through the Spark programme can access through Lucy, again, to test their algorithms. And we also benefit from non-dilutive funding and the incredible and pioneering scheme that the UK government put together. We are a spin out from the University of Oxford, which was also one of the initial quantum computing hubs. And yeah, it's really incredible to be part of such a vibrant ecosystem and to be able to partner and collaborate with so many people that are here today.
Hey everybody, Tony Uttley. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of Quantinuum. That's how you pronounce it, Quantinuum. So thank you. We're a combination. We're a year-old combination of what had formerly been Honeywell Quantum Solutions, and very importantly to this conversation, Cambridge Quantum Computing, which, as it might sound like, is a spin-out of Cambridge University, and our UK presence is about 210, 220 people at this point. And is kind of the centerpiece of where we're doing software development in operating system layer and in application layers from cybersecurity to chemistry to machine learning. So, a part of our overall, I'll say, thesis of being a company is to be able to work across the ecosystem on problems that are affecting customers in areas across financial services and materials development and pharmaceuticals, and being able to work with partners both on a software development side where they come in through our stack and our own hardware where we have trapped ion quantum computers that we have developed all kind of together on behalf of our customers.
Great. I'm Paul Lipman. I'm president of Quantum Information Platforms at Inflection, previously ColdQuanta. Accent notwithstanding, I actually live in Silicon Valley. Pure accident that I happen to be talking about the UK ecosystem with a British accent. So our company has been in business for a decade and a half. We've been in the UK since 2015 and went there really with the intent to build sovereign capability in the UK to really benefit from the tremendous ecosystem that the government was helping to facilitate, the tremendous talent and rich talent pool, which I'm sure we'll talk about during this session. And our business has really a number of areas of operation, from quantum components to clocks, quantum sensors, and quantum computing hardware and software. And in the UK, principally, we're doing sensor development and actually building products. So we're building product. Our best-selling product today was part of an Innovate UK project, a research project that we then commercialized and actually built product we now sell all over the world. So really, we feel the UK is not only a great place to do innovation, but actually a great place to also do commercialization as well. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that.
So yeah, that's a great segue. I'm going to remain with you, Paul, because what I'd really like to understand further is, going into a little bit more detail, because you started as a company in the US and then you decided to have a presence in the UK. What led to that decision? Why was it the UK that you decided as opposed to anywhere else in the world? And how has it actually helped in every aspect?
Yeah, I would say, and so I'll caveat by saying I wasn't with the company at the time when we first opened the office there. I think it's right to say we were the first US company to set up quantum operations in the UK. And that was largely a result of kind of three factors. First, that the government was the UK government was the first government that was actually serious about quantum at a strategic level. So in the US, certainly there had been quantum projects prior, but they were always kind of ancillary to another area of focus, whereas the UK really established a strategy for quantum early on and was supporting quantum at a senior level. So that was certainly part of the the impetus. The second is because the UK, as Steve has said, is really a kind of a hotbed of physics, certainly in the cold atom and ultra-cold atom area. Some of the world's best physicists in that area are doing work at places like Birmingham and Oxford and Imperial and Cambridge, certainly. So that was also a very important motivation for us. And I think the third was because there were companies, and increasingly companies in the UK, and especially in the defense area, we do a lot of work in the defense and national security space, that were serious about quantum from a commercialization standpoint and bringing products to market. So for all of those reasons, early on, we actually took one of our leaders in our sensor business and said, you're going to go to the UK, you're going to set up a business, stay there until you found a general manager and build our presence in Oxford. And he spent, I think, a good 6 months there, and we've been building the business and accelerating the building of the business ever since.
Thanks. Staying with that, I'll come to you, Steve. You started in Cambridge, but then you've now expanded over to the US. How has the journey across the pond in the other direction been?
We started in Cambridge because of this confluence of amazing physics and chip design. But actually, I have Herman Hauser to thank for this. A board meeting fairly early on, we had a discussion about how Acorn, back in, I don't know, a long time ago, had an amazing operating system. But as Herman put it, the bastards at Microsoft beat us to it. There's a global market for quantum computing. It's clearly huge here in the US. And so we decided early that we would be a global company and would come to the US as the next place to be. Hired Jake Taylor. So he's one of the top people here in the US, already had an established network, kind of used that as the basis then to build a team. So we now have an office in Boston, really brilliant set of people, and that's allowed us to grow the relationships that we had already with US-based companies.
For the minority of you who don't know, Herman Hauser is one of the co-founders of Amadeus Capital, and he was the founder of Acorn and Arm. So if I sort of pose that same question to you, Ilana, I mean, how has expanding your activities, across the Atlantic benefited?
Sure. So we've taken a slightly different strategy in that we don't yet have an office or a subsidiary in the US. But what we have recently done is expand across Asia Pacific. So OQC-KK has recently incorporated in Japan, and we have our general manager starting next month, which is very exciting. And we're expanding our team out there and our partnerships out there first. And that was a decision because whilst the US is really, really thriving, we felt that we wanted to get first mover advantage in other regions first, and then across 2023, 2024, we will certainly be looking for a place to call home in the US. So we are currently talking to quite a number of regions, universities, and there's a ton of incredible incentives for setting up quantum centers and enticing OQC to come set up in various places across the US. So it's definitely on the roadmap, but we've kind of gone to Japan first.
And Tony, you're in this, sort of really unique position, I think, in that you had a major presence in the US, you had a major presence in the UK as CQC, and you decided you wanted to merge the two. Mergers always send a little bit of shudders in people. So, dare I ask how it went?
No, actually, it's a great question. Turns out both governments really cared a lot, and so it's good and bad. But you get into conversations about why do you care so much, and it starts to feed into how much of an impact various governments believe quantum computing is going to have in the world. And it's that way from a national security perspective. It's that way from an economic security perspective. And truth be told, it's about talent. All about talent right now. Like, as valuable as we are, it's because of the people that we have. And frankly, the UK is better at bringing people from other parts of the world together into the UK. The US is not. We're seeing progress made there in some areas, but it's really slow in trying to make sure that we understand that this balancing of national security and economic security might not be in the right order in the U.S. And we've been very fortunate to benefit from that by having a very large presence in the UK, by having customers and supply chain based in the UK, and be able to expand that way.
You touch upon a very interesting point, and this is something, as investors, but also I'm sure as startup CEOs, everybody's always thinking about, and that's this whole technology sovereignty and how the governments react to that, and the rules that they tend to put into place. Good, bad, okay, bearable? Who wants to go first?
All right, I'll take it. Feels like it was just lobbed to me. No, it is. It varies a lot, government to government, and people have probably heard me say this, but in the U.S., the idea of how important this is from a national security perspective is one place. Economic security might not be in the same hand motion area. The UK is actually really pretty balanced. And then there are a lot of governments where economic security is so much farther ahead. With that US switch of having national security at the top, it comes with restrictions. It comes with a lot of bureaucracy that we're all trying to navigate through still. And I think having these discussions where not all ally governments think the same way is actually really good, because then the conversation opens up. We felt very much like when the US and the UK signed an agreement that said we are going to collaborate on quantum computing. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, who's going to do anything? And so it's like, all right, well, we'll merge together. That sounds like something we should do. It feels like you have to take some kind of action that spurs a conversation between governments, and we've seen that happen.
I'll jump in with a comment as well, because there's a lot of what we do that is related to technologies that are controlled, export controlled, sensors, timing, and the like. I think that the question of good thing or bad thing, I would say we're at this kind of pivotal moment where it's incumbent upon the industry to help advise government to ensure that we put obviously the right controls in place from a national security perspective, but that we don't over-regulate. Because if we do that, what will happen is it will end up being the country with the largest budget will win, and will stifle the development of these technologies before they really have a chance to kind of make it out into the mainstream. And certainly that's true in the quantum computing area, but even in the sensors area as well. So there's a lot of activity going on, certainly I know in the US, in the UK, kind of AUKUS more generally with Australia. We've recently announced the opening of an Australian entity as well. And so helping to advise governments and to participate at the policy level to ensure that we are providing the right guardrails, but at the same time enabling these technologies and companies to thrive. And I think the next kind of year to 2 years is going to be really important for ensuring that we do this the right way. And it's interesting, the US national quantum strategy is being worked on, the Australia national quantum strategy is being worked on. Certainly the Biden administration has been talking more actively about quantum. So now really is the time for us to kind of step forward and participate in this process.
If I can add, I think there's a really excellent points, because ultimately quantum is a technology that is going to have such a profound impact on society, right? It's both ethically, from sustainability, from economy. It's a societal challenge, it's a societal problem, and society is made up of people from all different backgrounds, and therefore we need industry to intersect with academia. We need academia to be intersecting with government and industry to be intersecting with government. We need holistically as a society and internationally as a community to be having these difficult conversations. And that's really where policy and regulation and import-export and the ethical challenges behind it need to be accelerated. and having those conversations enabled through things like the World Economic Forum, which also has a quantum program, thinking about how all of these things combine. They're not small problems, but they are societal problems. And as CEOs and as business leaders, we can't be naive to just think, well, that's not our problem. We have a responsibility ourselves to engage in those conversations and to support government, and government has a responsibility to navigate this incredible paradigm shift of technology that is going to happen and the impact it's going to have on society, both from an offensive but also from a defensive perspective. And I think the ethical questions around that are really, really complex, and that's where broader society, not just the quantum community, need to be involved. And I think that there's probably still a piece missing there, and there's a lot we can learn from AI. And for me, it's promising to see government taking such a keen interest, to see international collaboration. You know, the UK-US piece is fantastic, but we're also seeing other Five Eyes members come together. And, you know, we've hosted incredible tours, and we've had some of these incredible discussions, and there are things around WEF, but it's not just discussion. It then needs to translate into action. And it's always going to be a fine balance. And even when we're all sat there theorizing, like, it's when these things happen, right? When things come together and it translates into action, that's when ethics and leadership is most challenged. And that's when we'll find out whether we got that line right or not. But I think it's promising to see international governments taking leadership, and also the ethical leadership that I see in the space engaging with it so early.
Steve, what's been your experience, especially with the ITAR and that whole area?
Yeah, I think, as you said, Ilana, the current engagement is very promising, but has further to go. I can totally understand why quantum technologies will be regulated, why we need import-export controls. It would be amazing to see those being those are there for a reason, but import-export control between UK and US, when they've decided to collaborate on quantum, seems a bit mad, right? I mean, it's a complicated topic. I know it's not going to be as simple as, oh, we should just have some loose border here, but I would love to see that, as a wish list item.
No, absolutely. So if I pose the question, what measures or policies would you like to see in the nearer term, in the longer term? And is that, sort of UK, US, or maybe as sort of Tony said, all of the allied forces as a group? Well, what would your ideal world look like? For
me, it would be simply to buy things. The history of the semiconductor industry, like why are we in Silicon Valley, is because NASA was here. And NASA, as part of the Apollo program, was buying integrated circuits at a time when IBM said they're too expensive. So that created, like Moore's Law, all of those data points were from NASA buying integrated circuits from an industry as a smart buyer. So if they didn't work, they got sent back. So there's an amazing role for governments in emerging technologies. I think in quantum could do the same. There's no reason that necessarily has to be US or UK. They could work together, they could buy things together, or any other group of countries. I think we have a long way to go to get to useful quantum computing. Buying prototypes is going to really drive the industry.
So the government almost being the procurer,
yes,
rather than even grant funding. Ilana, would you agree, add to that?
Yeah, I completely echo Steve here. Government as a customer, demonstrating leadership to both public and private markets, but also not just a small customer, a big customer. So you can drive collaboration, drive interaction to deliver on commercial deals. Like, that's the way, from my perspective, you build an economy. In the UK, the US did this really, really well. They typically do this through DARPA, and it's been proven to work incredibly well. And it's great to see the UK also having similar programs now being set up. But yeah, government as a customer, government showing leadership, rather than funding that might mean people come together to create consortia to tick some boxes. I think having a customer-led delivery makes companies grow up, it forms the allyships where they need to deliver, and if that can cross borders and not be exclusionary, then I think that's the way we can grow the ecosystem. The challenge by putting the borders in place right now, or excluding certain people from delivery, is that it will disrupt and challenge the supply chain, and we do need to grow the quantum supply chain, not limit it. Otherwise, there are going to be certain areas that really, really struggle, and that will ultimately stifle the ecosystem rather than grow it, even if the intention might be to be growing it, but through a protective way that's actually quite exclusionary. So government as a customer, but an inclusive customer.
Tony, any other measures?
I would just have a little carrot that says government as a commercial customer.
Yeah.
Like, just be a commercial customer. I don't, all the far flow downs and defar flow, we don't need them. Like, there are lots of commercial customers who are buying these things. Buy as a commercial customer. Is that the camera? Buy as a commercial. No. And then it is a global supply chain. That's the way it exists. It didn't grow up that way because there was a lot of planning in place. It just happened because the incredible things that we all need to go build the systems that we build, they come from all over the world. And so the first step is recognizing that they already come from all over the world. So if you think you're going to put in a regulation that stops that, it just shuts down everything. So having there be bilateral agreements between many countries that just say, this is how we're going to operate. We want to all be a part of a big supply chain. And for all of us, we want to protect our own IP. So the government really wants the same things we want. We want to protect our IP. We're going to do a lot to protect it. Help us protect it, and then allow us to participate in the supply chain, and then be a commercial customer.
I'm going to slightly add to the question when I ask it for you, Paul. What about talent? Is there something that the UK, US governments could be doing other than any other policies that you think they should be putting into place?
Yeah, I'll come to talent in a second. I just want to amplify a point a couple of the panelists made about supply chain. I think what governments are very good at doing, and I speak here more from the standpoint of maybe the US, but also actually the UK, is to fund the development of one of something or two of something. We need support and government involvement as we develop the supply chain to manufacture 1,000 of something, 10,000 of something, as we seek to go after as a commercial supplier for these larger programs of record, right? So yes, we can produce in a bespoke way very small numbers of these quantum products. How do we scale this up to the mainstream? Government has a part to play there. In terms of talent, actually, one of the things that really attracted us to the UK was the development of these centres for doctoral training. And in fact, many of the people we have in our office in Oxford now came through those programs in the UK. So I would point out that's one of the areas that the UK has really shone. I think as we look at it, pushing now talent development from, yes, at the doctoral level, how do we push down to the master's level, through undergrad, even down to high school, for awareness of these technologies, awareness of careers in quantum, and encouraging and supporting the programs, internships, and that transition from academia to commerce is enormously important. And we have a lot of relationships with academia and universities coming to us to support. Could you help us to set up a quantum technology program? Could you help support with sponsorships? Government involvement, but doing that at a strategic level will enable us to set up for the workforce of the future.
That makes a lot of sense. In which case, what does sort of further expansion in the market look like? And I'm going to start with you, Ilana. Like, what does it look like for you in terms of the global players, in terms of the supply chain? How do you see this happening in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think we've already seen accelerated market maturity over the last few years, like greater than anybody expected. So with the types of mergers, with the supply chain maturity, with the standard of technology delivery, I think it's safe to say the genie's out the bottle. There's the tech, there's the talent, the levels of investment have far exceeded. We've seen companies go public that I don't think people necessarily expected to see as quickly. So I would expect to see the market continue to travel on that projection. Yes, the broader markets right now are a little bit not so great, so we might slow down a little bit. But one of the great things about deep tech is people do recognize these are long time horizons. So if you are navigating in the right areas, there should be some element I would expect to see of resilience to the more short-term, broader market challenges. And I think that is reflected. Now, what we do need to see to make sure that that projection does continue trending in this positive manner is, of course, customers, which is where government as a customer comes in, but also broader market interaction, running algorithms and getting the business added value, whether that's, it's not going to be an advantage, of course, in the next year or two, certainly from my perspective, but we do need to see that market pull continue to drive. Otherwise, I think there is a danger that it starts to, people, what's the hype cycle? The disillusionment bit. We want to avoid that. So let's avoid disillusionment by doing what we say we will do, all continuing to have a healthy amount of balance of collaboration and competition on an international level.
Steve, what is...
For me, I think if we start with maybe the analogy of AI is a useful one here. There was a major breakthrough in AI with AlphaGo that I think showed people that this was different, right? Did something we couldn't do before. We were good at playing chess, but we didn't know how to play Go. And suddenly, this is now possible. And I think that moment in quantum computing is a really key one. I think there are different opinions where what exactly that would look like. For me, it would be the simulation of some strongly correlated system, probably some materials type problem that was previously impossible. And so this clearly shows that this technology does something that you couldn't otherwise. It's not just a bit better, it's radically different. So kind of taking that as the goal, it's going to take us 10 years to get there. This is like a marathon. What the industry, I think, needs to do is show milestones towards that. So it was fantastic to see the first prototype logical qubit this year. Still, we haven't got to the point where the logical error rates are not as good as, are better than the physical error rates, and that's the next big milestone. Coming up, I think in the next year or so, we're going to see kind of things like the real-time loop of read out, decode, and correct. Like these are like technical milestones, but I think they're showing the direction towards the ultimate goal. And I think that will continue to show that as an industry, we're getting to something really significant. So I don't think the problem in quantum is necessarily kind of create excitement in the next 2 years. It's demonstrate that this technology is transformative. And I think when people see how big it can be, then there's a willingness to invest.
And would you agree, Tony?
For the most part. So where would I disagree? I guess I would disagree with, it depends on what your perspective is. These are technologies that evolve over decades. That is absolutely true. We have no idea what quantum computing will eventually do. We can't even conceive of it. That's kind of, I always like that comment that it's impossible to write a list of all the things you've never conceived of, right? So where is this going to go? We have ideas. We have great ideas for what use cases could be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. These are incredible systems now, right now. And we have the ability to give them to brilliant people. And that's, I think, one of the things that we have all benefited from across multiple geographies. Absolutely the UK. We have genius, really genius level people who every day, all day, think about what can I go do with this thing? And when you sit there and say, well, my use case is I'm going to go build a Great Pyramid, and I have in my hand a shovel. And you go, well, man, I'm going to need 1 million shovels to go do that. Instead of going, I have a shovel. It does a pretty cool thing right now. I should go and figure out what I can do with this thing. And having people just be able to have that experience and try out various use cases where we're starting to see the signs that you have advantage. Because in some areas, you have advantage today. It does something that classical computing cannot. We just kind of forget that we have to give these brilliant people the opportunity to just be brilliant.
Paul?
Yeah, I think there's this old saying, people tend to overestimate technology's potential in the near term and underestimate it in the long term, right? And so there's a lot of discussion about, is the quantum industry overhyped? I think if anything, actually, it's underhyped in terms of the long-term potential, right? Are we going to have breakthrough quantum advantage next week, next month? Probably not. Maybe there's someone somewhere working on a system none of us had ever heard of. But ultimately, longer term, there's absolutely no question. If you look at the direction and you look at the trajectory of these technologies, no question this is coming. And I think to the point Tony was making, we don't know what the kind of the breakthrough is going to be. We don't know what the ultimate use case is going to be. But there are enough. I mean, at this conference, incredibly smart people in a whole variety of industries who are testing out these technologies, and to Ilana's point, getting it into the hands of people to start experimenting. I think as we think more broadly about quantum, though, we do have quantum advantage today in some of these technologies like clocks, right? I mean, GPS is a quantum technology, and it is orders of magnitude better than anything that came before. And we'll see advances made more broadly within quantum in the near term that will transform our lives, right? The ability to navigate without referring to GPS, radically different technologies for detecting minerals under the earth or for national security purposes. So if we look at quantum from a broad perspective, not just computing, I think there will be transformative impacts in the very near future.
I'm going to actually throw the floor open to any questions that the audience might have of the panel. Go for it.
Is there a mic?
Do you want to use?
Sorry about that. Some of you have alluded to this already, but where do you see opportunities in the remainder of the Anglosphere, the Five Eyes? So Canada has a great quantum ecosystem. I'm not sure if that came up already. I think, Paul, you mentioned Australia. How about New Zealand? These should be relatively easier countries to cooperate with within the alliance. And a twofold question. This is not meant to be asked as a political one, but Britain is going through quite historic times, quite a lot of change. In the government's paper earlier this year, quantum was listed as one of the potential benefits post-Brexit. It might be too early to talk about it now, but how do you see potential agility of the United Kingdom in its new arrangements? How could that help the quantum industry? I know it's a dreaded topic in Britain, perhaps a tiring one over the past 6 years, but meant to ask mostly from a business perspective.
Brexit's a can of worms. So in terms of kind of the global scene, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are fantastic ecosystems around the world, and we've been talking about the UK and the US, but by kind of, this is a global problem, and there are smart people around the world. The UK's been great at attracting people. I think other places are. I think international collaboration amongst like-minded countries is really the way forward. I would just totally agree.
We're making our way through Brexit. Let's see. And anything else that any of you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't catch all of the question. I mean, I think there's kind of international programs. But certainly, if you look at what Japan is doing with their moonshot program and really kind of bold, ambitious goals with significant funding, patient capital over long periods of time, really with the objective of creating transformative technology, certainly in quantum computing, but kind of more broadly, I think there's lessons to be learned there. Certainly talked about Australia. I mean, significant government funding for deep tech and development of an ecosystem. I think one of the things the UK has done really kind of took a very interesting approach in saying, look, we're going to fund, but we're only going to fund if there are consortia that are coming together as a way of creating an ecosystem, and arguably the UK has one of the most vibrant ecosystems in quantum today. And so I think there are lessons learned from all of these different locations, and it's the sharing of these ideas and these approaches and best practices that will really kind of enable us to move this industry forward.
I think I can comment. From adversity, we can always create opportunity, and as entrepreneurs and leaders of companies, we will keep doing that. My bigger concern actually is with the talent pipeline and the impact on academia. So we hear more and more from the university community that actually they're really struggling to attract talent in, whilst as a company, I haven't seen that impact. We have visas, we have lots of different mechanisms, but there's almost like a perception that it's more challenging or that we're not welcoming. As a scientific community, we are very, very welcoming, and we are very collaborative and very much wanting to remain collaborative internationally through Europe and wider and beyond. But I do see and hear regularly from our academic colleagues that they are struggling to recruit into PhDs and postdocs. And that's what underpins the foundation of the UK's strength of talent and success. So that's a concern for the future that I know governments are discussing.